Moshe coming to you from Israel in the Galilee. Today is what we call in Hebrew Yom Rishon, the first day of the week. You would call it Sunday. And it's the 24th of August. It's 8:15 in the morning. There's a reasonable amount of news to go through today. I would not say excessive, but pretty good amount. And what we're going to cover today is we're going to go through a false flag effort that Russia appears to be putting out. I'll break it down for you in great detail, and I think you'll agree it looks like a false flag. It doesn't look like anything else, which could mean big war. It's Russia with Estonia, but we'll get into it. Basically, Russia said Estonia is preparing to attack them. Now, it was said on the Russian TV channel number 1, which everybody that owns a TV in Russia can pick up. I don't think you need any subscription service. And he was telling this to the Russian people, who don't have a good broad perspective of what's going on in the world, I expect. I don't know. But anyway, that's what he said. Israel is really taking Gaza over. Our tanks have surrounded Gaza City, while Netanyahu is still negotiating with them. And there was a bunch of protests last night. That wasn't, I don't think, anything huge. And there's supposed to be, there was scheduled a work strike in Israel for today. I don't know much about if that went off or not. I haven't heard that it did, but maybe. And there was some very, very, very big news about carry concealed weapons permits in America. And this is what I would call earth-shaking in a positive and a good way. But it's going to cause so much tension in America, and I'll break it down for you. It's a little complicated if you don't follow this stuff. And I'm having trouble with the summarized YouTube things. One thing I learned is if you're working with a live stream and the live stream is finished, there is likely not going to be a transcript till the next day. So it's a little difficult to get summaries of the live streams from my program, but ChatGPT can go and it gets the title and it searches the internet to see what's really going on. So it's pretty good. I did get a summarization of a video that said that the Egyptian tanks in the Sinai Peninsula were firing on the fortifications of Israel inside Gaza. And I said, what? I didn't hear about that. I would have heard about that like crazy here in Israel, like crazy. And I went to, I think I used Grok for this, and I sent Grok out to see what was going on, and Grok came back and told me it was phony. It was a couple of goofballs that were trying to push the story that, they do this to psych up the Muslims that are terrorist prone around the world and get them all excited that we're going to eradicate Israel, we're going to kill all the infidels, we're going to make them slaves, and all this moronic stuff they preach to them. And that's really what they do. The cat Leo is first wound has a scab over it, which is, I would say, a good thing. And the second thing, the abscess, which is fluids, I think, built up from an infection or something, is reducing in size. So we could keep the prayers going for Leo the cat for full and complete healing of his abscess in his wound. And I ask you for this, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with me, if you will. Okay. And there'll be other things we're going to talk about in Israel, and we're going to do our binding and loosing and tossing and prayer agreement. And crazy is I'm starting to pick up new subscribers again, which is, okay. I'm very happy, but I didn't expect it. Okay, let me go into the live stream. Make sure we got ourselves a live stream. Make sure we got ourselves a live. We got ourselves a live stream. Thank you, moderators. Makes life a lot easier on me. Portugal, okay. All right, I'm going to put a quick post up in the chat. Whoops, what did I do? I hit something. Let me get out of here. Okay. Try that again. I'm almost finished, guys. Just trying to make sure I don't get any typos. And let me check. It looks like, with my weak eyes, it looks like I got it. Okay. All right, being a Bible-believing site, we'll do some praise and get going. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 My Heavenly Father, I bind any unclean spirits from being inside any people and watching or listening to this video, or watching or listening to it not being inside of people. And that would apply to the live stream and the video. And I ask this now of this binding of you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you all can agree with me. So we're not going to have their games, okay? So we could start talking about Estonia because that's rather disturbing. Estonia is a little country near Russia, and Russia said they're planning on attacking Russia. What? What? The active military in Estonia is 7,000. 7,000 people. And that's counting engineers that, build things and repair trucks, stuff like that. I mean, what? I mean, really? We're supposed to believe this? Well, he didn't tell it to us. He was telling it to the people of Russia. Okay? They don't have an air force. I don't know of anything resembling a navy, and, what are they going to do? I mean, to Russia? It's a joke. Now, if you take the 3-to-1 rule, let me explain what that is. It's a general, broad, non-specific application in military colleges that if you want to conquer a city or a town or a country that's held by the people that live there or their military, you generally are going to need 3 of your soldiers for every 1 of theirs. So that means Russia needs about 21,000 soldiers, which is nothing for him. And a bunch of tanks, armored personnel carriers, helicopters, portable rocket launchers, mobile artillery, towed artillery, air support from aircraft. And I don't know what it would take Putin to take the place over. 6 or 8 hours to 72 hours. And Estonia will fall. There's really no doubt about it. It would fall. So what Putin is doing, I gotta check the window here. What is so dangerous about this is Estonia is NATO. So if Putin attacks Estonia, Estonia is going to call NATO and try to activate Article 5, all for one and one for all, and have, 80, 90,000 NATO soldiers with tanks and aircraft show up and tell Russia to go home. Okay? But this is the reality of this. And this is scary. Russia knows that NATO is a bunch of punks, just like the European Union, and they really don't want to fight him, and they're using Ukraine as a proxy to do so, as Trump uses Israel. And if you think it's not the case, you're deceiving yourself. So Putin is saying, I'm having so much belligerence from this Trump and the countries in Europe and NATO and otherwise that, they're making my life impossible to Ukraine. Why can't they just look the other way? I go in and I take over Ukraine. I'm not going to exterminate the people. I'm just going to give them a Russian passport and tell them they're now Russians and put them on the ruble, and, maybe I'll get rid of, 5 or 10,000 of their intel people and, key political, or maybe not. And, that's it. Now I'm reinstated Ukraine back into Russia where it used to be. Why can't they just accept that? Well, they're not. They don't want Ukraine being a buffer zone between them and Russia, and it's a big buffer zone. And once he gets Ukraine, the next piece of his buffer zone would likely be Romania. that would really give them a lot of protection too. And Romania can't hold up against Putin. You know, they're too small. Maybe Putin couldn't take them out in 72 hours. It may take 96, or it might take 10 or 15 days, but that's about it. I don't think they could hold on more than 2 weeks. They'd be surrendering like crazy. I think they're a low morale military, a low morale country. They don't like their leaders. They've been historically corrupt for decades. And they know Russia's corrupt, but they would be in the mode of, heck, if we surrender to Russia, we might be better off. Now, they would lose their EU status if Russia takes them over. That they wouldn't like. Because for some of them, they can live the dream and they can leave Romania, get on a bus and go someplace in the EU, find a boarding house and try to find work. Now, they're going to need language skills. Speaking Romanian's not going to help them too much. They might be able to master Italian if they know Romanian, because it's kind of in there. Maybe even Russian or something, I'm not sure. But they need to have fluency, not just broken Russian, you know. So I don't think that many of them make it. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of young, attractive girls that go over there and be bar waitresses and hostesses and, you know, various entertainment in places that believers should never go into, pole dancing and, you know, that kind of thing. I do know stuff like that goes on with Romanian women. They do it in Romania and they do it, you know, elsewhere. It's a very, very rough economy. It's a very, very corrupt place, and you're not going to get ahead over there because of the corruption. They know that. Foreign investment is very reluctant to operate there because of the corruption. You can be sued in their courts where they pay off the judge and the prosecutor, and then you're going to lose your assets. So a lot of people don't like it. And what else goes on? So if Russia says, the way a false flag works, folks, is Russia or gets a friend of theirs, maybe like Belarus or something, somebody, them or a good friend of theirs, attacks some Russian military somewhere. And some of the soldiers in the Russian military might get killed or hurt, and property destroyed and damaged. And they come back and they say Estonia did it. Okay? Now they pinned the tail of the donkey on Estonia, and Estonia says, "What the heck are you talking about? We didn't do anything." And as all this denial is going on, Russia is attacking Estonia because they've already prepped for it, because they announced it on their Russian TV station yesterday. So they just moved on Estonia, who is, I mean, they're going to surrender, I think. They're not going to fight with vigor because they're going to get plowed out. Russian planes are going to bomb them. Russian missiles are going to attack them, and civilian areas. Putin likes to hit civilian areas. You know, and artillery's going to pound them. It's, you know, going to be pretty bad. The airports will go out, you know, the power generators. People are going to throw the towel in quickly. And he's going to be nice to the civilians, relatively speaking. Will he really be nice to the civilians? Yes. Will he put them in concentration camps? No. Will he persecute any Jews living in Estonia. No, he's not going to do any of that. Who would he go after? Well, the existing government. He'd probably want them dead, so they can't go back and be a figurehead for a revolt to get the country back. He doesn't want to see that, So they would go like members of the parliament. They would just be disappearing. But and members of the intelligence service and their FBI people, and the traffic cops and the cops arresting shoplifters and prostitutes and car thieves. Nah, he's not going to go after them. He needs them. He doesn't want to do the work. Let them do the work. So then he puts his troops in there and he occupies Estonia. Now, what about NATO? This is the thing. Here you go. Listen to this, because it could be a very real reality very quickly, like this week even. Okay? He's announcing they intend to attack him. If you wait till Thanksgiving, that is gone into the dust. It's forgotten. And, you got to do it all over again. So it's only going to hold for a few days. All right, so what could NATO do? Well, the NATO heads are going to sit there and they say, yeah. If we attack Russia over this on an Article 5 and protect Estonia, we're likely going to have an all-out war with Russia. And North Korea just pledged him 30,000 soldiers. I wonder why. Maybe for Estonia. That's just about the right number. But I don't think he's going to invade Estonia with North Korean troops. That's a little silly. He might use them to fill holes in Ukraine or something. All right, so, and North Korea is sending them to Russia, not Ukraine, so Putin is probably going to take the time to train them. He probably has a bunch of people that know the lingo of Korean by now and are going to, teach his combat troops how to conduct combat in Ukraine. And I don't think he's going to use them for tank drivers or missile launchers or artillery or drones, unless they're using North Korean drones or North Korean artillery or missiles, which is always a possibility. But it's a curious thing, because that's probably about the number of troops that Russia would deploy against Estonia. So they blow up a base, or they might even blow up a city and hurt people and things like that. And he just gets up on TV with Lavrov. Estonia did this. They're trying to provoke a war with NATO. Well, if they want to start a war, we'll give them a war. We're Russia. And they play the Russian national anthem, and see pictures on TV of soldiers walking down the street with the goose step, and all this nonsense, right? Okay, then what? Now NATO got to reach a decision, and they got to think fast. And they got to think while they're trying to plow out of the tossed salad and all enchiladas. It's very binding. It can cause looseness with them, if you get my drift. So what can they do? What would they likely do? They likely would throw Estonia under the bus. What does that mean? Article 5 does not apply if a NATO member state takes aggressive action and brings it on themselves. In other words, if a NATO member attacks another nation and then that nation counterattacks them, NATO does not have to go in to stop the counterattack because it's a result of the aggression of the NATO state, i.e., in this case, Estonia. So they probably aren't going to go in. Are they so stupid that they wouldn't realize a country with an army of 7,000 active soldiers is not going to start a war with Mother Russia? Yes. Would they be aware of the fact that this is likely a false flag event? Yes. But why would they let this happen? Because they're cowardly. And who there would agree with this position but the Trump? Estonia's got nothing we need. If we have a war with Russia, their 7,000 soldiers aren't going to amount to a hill of beans, and they're going to have to wind up staying in Estonia to defend Estonia, so they're not going to be able to help us. I don't even know why they got these people in Estonia in NATO. I don't know how they could reach the military standard. They don't have nothing. Do you think that NATO's going to say, okay, let's mobilize, and they're going to put together? Russia's going to come at Estonia with 30,000 troops, and they'll be in Estonia. Use the same numbers. So now NATO needs 90,000 to shove Russia out of Estonia. They'll be in Estonia in hours. By the time they can mobilize and make a serious effort to take Estonia back, what? Russia's got it, occupied and controlled. So now you need a 3-to-1 rule on them. So NATO raising 90,000 with helicopters, with aircraft, with tanks, with armored personnel carriers, with ground troops, coming in and engaging in a brutal battle with Russia in Estonia. And that could very, very, very likely be where some or all of these 30,000 Korean troops are going to be, because Putin knows it's going to be a rough fight. So he's definitely going to have Russian soldiers there, but if he has the North Koreans there, even 10,000, to just hold positions and keep keep any push in by NATO from taking hold, he gets far. I have a feeling NATO will not do it. They're going to talk to Trump, who's the biggest NATO player. They're going to talk to the UK, which is heavily Mohammedized, right? They're going to talk to France, another big player who's heavily Mohammedized. Germany's not going to like this at all, nor would Italy. And they're all going to be looking for a way out, including Trump, who's going to push real hard for a way out. And they're probably not going to fight Estonia. They're going to throw it under the bus because it's not worth enough to them to go to war. And then what happens? Then Putin makes a nice show of how nice he becomes to Estonia, okay? And they get Russian passports, and he keeps it minimal as to the purging of the threats. In other words, he's not going to go around like the Gestapo all day long, Who is it? Gestapo, lay down on the floor, spread your arms and legs. They're not going to do that. Okay, he's going to pick up a small amount of people as he possibly can, and he's going to demilitarize the military, and then the Estonian traffic cops and police are going to be the police. The Estonian courts are going to be the courts. But he'll put Russian law in. He'll put the Russian Constitution in, and they'll be part of Russia. They'll just be in other Russian territory, and they'll have a Russian ID card and a Russian passport, and there'll be Russian banks, and that's all that's going to happen. And Trump will go for it. He's so cowardly. He's going to say, well, if Estonia wanted to do it, then, they started it. They did it to themselves. Now, are the other countries in NATO going to realize that they threw Estonia under the bus? Of course. But what are they going to do about it? And it's not going to stop here. It's going to go to Latvia and Lithuania. And if it worked on Estonia, it's going to work on Lithuania and Latvia, who are not so powerful either. And he starts picking off NATO because of their cowardice. Why is Putin doing this? Because he thinks he'll get away with it. Number one, you have to understand the threat value of what Putin did to Trump here with Ukraine and Russia. Trump's not being nice to Russia. He's trying to push him, okay? So Putin has now made an announcement to Trump that says, so he's throwing a warning at Trump. Leave me the heck alone with Ukraine. Trump, you bum. Leave me alone and let me do my thing. I'm not attacking America. Leave me the heck alone, you moron. And Ukraine's not in NATO. Don't rain on my parade. Well, Trump doesn't listen. A threat of more weapons. Now Ukraine's saying, okay. Trump knows exactly what Russia's doing. Now, what if there's a division in NATO and Trump gets mad and says, this is a phony thing, Estonia didn't do it. And the other countries say, well, we're investigating. And what happens while they investigate? Russia cements itself into Estonia, taking over the infrastructure, the airports, digging themselves in with bunkers and, so while they're investigating there, Estonia is getting more and more buried by Russia, and that means taking it over gets harder and harder. Is this going to happen? Well, it already started. It's sheer moronic thinking that Estonia is going to attack Russia unless Trump wants to suck Russia in. This is another thing. Okay, Estonia maybe really did threaten them at the insistence of Trump and NATO, and they want Russia to attack Estonia, and then they could total out, then they defend Estonia and total out Russia. But do I think that's real? Heck no. It was just portrayed on the Russian television station. I think they call it Number One, and it wasn't portrayed by Trump and NATO. So that's not the case. It's a false flag running by Putin. They'll warn Putin, and Putin will say, "Well, I'm for peace. I don't start war. These rotten Estonians are doing it." You know, it's the sort of thing you'll see. Do I think this has a reasonably decent, percentage of coming to pass? I'd give it on the high side 70%, maybe 50-50. It's not something I think Putin is really looking forward to. It's a threat. And if it doesn't work as a threat, I'm not entirely sure Putin will go through with it. Like I said, 70%. Because if he miscalculates and they come after him, NATO comes after him, he's got a real problem. And the chances of China rushing over to Europe to bail Putin out is not high. It's about as high as NATO bailing Estonia out. They would be rather prone to just cut Russia off and stay alive to kill again another day rather than risk everything. But I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, we got to watch. Okay, so that's a very serious development because you're dealing with transactional idiots across the board, and they very likely don't know what they're doing, and they might trigger a big international war because they're stupid. Okay? They're Satan's people. How smart could they be? They're spiritually blind. Don't think they're that smart. All right. Let's talk about the gun control. So the Supreme Court of the United States, not the state, not the New York court, or the big Supreme Court of the United States, voted 6-3, 6 winning, about carry concealed weapons permits. And what they said, there was a case involving New York, either the city or the state. And New York doesn't do what's called shall issue carry concealed weapons permits. Florida, for instance, is a shall issue state. People go there. Well, people in Florida go and they apply for a permit, and if you meet the general requirements, they've got to give it to you. The general requirements are rather simplex. You have to take a course in gun safety for about 6 or 8 hours, or you have to convince them that you had other training. So if you worked in law enforcement and were trained there, you're in. If you took NRA courses, this is in the past, hunter safety and things like that, they used to let you in. I don't know if they still do it, but I did it back then on hunter safety a long time ago, and they let it in. Maybe now they want that course, or they want a law enforcement, or maybe military experience. It seems to me there's a lot of ways to get it, and you got to have a criminal records check and not be a felon. I think you can be a misdemeanor. In other words, you have misdemeanors and they don't care. And there might be some other issues about domestic violence or something in there. I don't know, but that probably is covered by felony, I guess. You might have a temporary restraining order or injunction against you, forbidding you to having a gun for a period of time. There's things that could happen, okay? But basically, they got to issue the permit. Now you go to New York, New Jersey, many other states like California, and the crooks there only want the government crooks only want to issue you a permit if you could show them cause for the permit. Now, is there in the law, is there a list of hard criteria that you can show them that's objective and they can't sway one way or the other? No. It's up to them. It's completely discretionary. So they have not must issue permits, they have discretionary permits. So in San Francisco many years ago when I lived there, the city of San Francisco had 7 gun permits issued. Total of 7. One was Dianne Feinstein, who I think was the mayor or a senator or something back then. I don't remember what her title was. She had one. There was some other character that made it into the newspapers more than once that was a retired CIA guy at a high level, and he had one. And I don't think any of us really knew who the other 5 were. Maybe former judges or something. I don't know. Judges in some states get gun permits without having to have a gun permit, like police officer. They just use their judge credentials. And I don't know if that's the same in every state. Okay. I believe it's that way in Florida. They get a judge ID card. I don't think they get a badge. Some of them might have badges. I don't know. But there's people that run around with badges that aren't cops, like people on the board of supervisors will often have a badge. What do they need a badge for? Building inspectors get badges, restaurant inspectors, health inspectors that inspect, nursing homes, rehabilitation hospitals, old age homes, They sometimes get badges, but they don't have arrest powers. If they want to make an arrest, they generally, if it was an emergency, they would call their supervisor and he would say, call the police. They would probably go out to their car and wait for the police to come and explain to the police what was going on. And the police would call the sergeant or the lieutenant or the watch commander or the captain or who knows who, and try to figure out what to do. It would, now if it was a cut and dry thing, like a nurse in the old age home beat a patient up and they had it on camera, well, the police are just going to lock them up. That sort of thing. But, things go on in these old age homes, like some of the people that work there prostitute themselves to the old age inmates. Yeah, this goes on. They prostitute themselves out. And if these people want to call in an outside prostitute and lock the door of their room and engage with the outside, they let it go on. I mean, the morality in America is gone. It's the daughter of Babylon. Okay, so so much for judges and badges. Okay, so moving, they even give firemen badges. Not every jurisdiction, correction officers get badges, but they usually have some sort of powers too. They're usually not a police officer, they're a peace officer, which means they got some power, they can carry weapons. It's a little softer than being a policeman, All right, so moving along. You have to understand that this case has massive implications to make America crazy, as in ruler against ruler. And I will explain. People in California, New Jersey, and New York, to pick 3 examples, there's probably another. Washington, D.C. is another example. They don't like giving out permits. And I think Illinois is another, and Michigan maybe. I don't have it down anymore, all the states, but it's at least 6 or 8 states that are very harsh on not wanting people to have carry concealed weapons permits in their state. Okay? When you add up New York, New Jersey, and California, you got probably 70, 80 million people. Okay? Out of 350 million roughly in America, that's huge, right? Okay. So what this is going to change, like in New York, Robert De Niro had a carry concealed weapons permit. What the heck does he need one for? Oh, he's a public figure. He's at risk for a kidnapping and this and that. So do they give permits to everybody that's worth $50 million? No. Maybe a lot of them get permits because they get politically active and contribute money, give this guy 5,000, this one 10,000, this one 3,000, and then they find their way in, and then somebody tells the police commissioner this is a good guy, he needs a permit, and they give him a permit. Okay? Police hate doing that because if the guy decides he wants to get drunk and get high on drugs and kill his wife and his kids one day, it comes back on the police commissioner. Or if he's out in the street and he does a bad shoot, in other words, he shot somebody that was insulting him and antagonizing him and pushing him where there was no clear fear for the life, and he killed the guy. Well, now it's back on the police department. Why did he have a permit? So they hate doing it, but they got to do it because they're political at the high level. So now everybody in New York and California and New Jersey can go down and apply for a carry concealed weapons permit. I've never known the departments to not give you an application. Sometimes they were playing games and say we're out of applications, or we'll mail you one, and they never do. But typically, they give them the application. Because if you give it to anybody, you got to give it to everybody. So they normally will give you an application, or they'll get dragged into court and lose. So you get the application, and you fill it out, and you apply. And you probably have to do a few things, like at least get a criminal records check, maybe other things, I don't know. You do that and you submit it together. And if they turn you down, there's going to be tons of pro-gun lawyers that'll take the case pro bono and file lawsuits against the state of New York, or if it was a local police department that declined to permit them, and accuse them of violating the Supreme Court order. And it's going to get very ugly for the state of New York, New Jersey, and California, New Jersey, New York, and so forth, because the cases are going to stack up. Like within a month, New York will probably have 200-300 cases. Okay? And the courts are going to get mad, and they're not going to know how the heck they're supposed to support this decision of ignoring the federal Supreme Court, because the appellate courts are going to overturn them, and they don't like being overturned. It's not a good thing. And the plaintiff that's filing the lawsuit is going to go after money damages too. And the high-level Supreme Courts may see that. Or if they can't get anywhere in the state courts, they may go to the federal courts and ask for injunctive relief, in other words, stay orders on that state from denying gun licenses based on failing to show a need to have the permit. They may issue an injunction against them doing it. The first defense of these states that want to stop people from getting guns is to ignore the Supreme Court decision. The first defense from the pro-gun people is to get lawyers, and they've got them, that are going to file a lot of lawsuits on these cases. And it's easy for the lawyer because he just gets a copy of the application and a copy of the denial letter, and he has the same lawsuit for everybody. It's the same lawsuit. And he just rubber stamps them and files them. And the state can only hope to drag it out and buy time. That's all they can hope for. And the lawyers know that, and they're going to try to abbreviate it. So what would life look like under this? And you may see this in effect pretty quickly. The lawyers know the way to get quick enforcement is to seek money damages somehow. And I don't think it's that hard to do because their violation of the federal Supreme Court is so blatant, okay, and so obvious that it's almost like they could get disbarred, okay? I don't know, maybe, but I don't think so. Maybe. And the state could be losing monetary damages, and they could be bringing these cases into the federal court system where the state is going to lose badly. So do you know what it's going to be like for the people that live in California, which is run by extreme left-wing people? They like living there because people don't have guns. San Francisco, I mean, people have guns in their house in San Francisco, but people in San Francisco normally are not going to have a gun on their person in the street, nor will they have a gun in their car because the police are going to give them a bad time. Okay? They could get, on the first offense, up to 1 year in jail. I believe it's a misdemeanor. They don't get a year and a day, which makes it a felony. So they could be in the pokey for a year. If it's a second offense, then they could go to San Quentin or something, you know. The prosecutors will voraciously prosecute anybody that is carrying a gun and uses it, even though they're more in, you know, within their rights to defend themselves, you know. They'll prosecute them anyway. The police may start arresting people for brandishing. What does brandishing mean? It means you're displaying the weapon openly for intimidation of another person. Okay? And so any person that is carrying a concealed weapon and they are in a supermarket and they bend over and their coat moves and people see the butt of the gun, they may call the police and say, this guy's been brandishing a gun. I can identify the gun. Well, they can identify what they saw. Now, will the police actually come over there? It depends on the police department and so forth. And then the guy has to still be around, and they could maybe get him on video. I mean, you could maybe make some brandishing cases. The guy could appeal it and everything. I don't know. But the people in California are going to go nuts. They live there because they want to live someplace where people don't carry guns. New York, the people wanted to carry guns back in the 50s and 60s. It used to be up until sometime in the 60s that in New York City, the captain of the precinct could issue you a gun permit that was it good for the entire state of New York? I think so. Back then, I think it was. Now they got crazy things. They got permits that are issued from jurisdictions outside of New York City that work but not in New York City. So you can't bring your gun into New York City. So New York City holds themselves out as special, making it very hard for anybody to get a gun unless you know the right people, and then it's easy. Now, they used to have, and I think they still do, have what was called a premises permit, where you could get a permit that would let you carry your gun on your premises. So if you were a jewelry store or a liquor store, you could get a permit that let you carry the gun. And with that permit came, you could have the gun when you were going from your house to work and from work back to your house. So when police stopped people, they wanted to know where they were going, what was going on. Very hard to get a conviction with that. People would stop and go to the movies on the way home with their gun, and I don't think a lot happened to them. Would stop and get something to eat. If your place of business was closed on Sunday and you were carrying the gun on Sunday, then you had a rough time. You could also say, well, I was going down there to take an inventory, while it was closed. But that stuff, they hand those permits out, but not like candy, but they exist. I don't know how many they give out. Okay? Having a pistol in your house in New York City by itself is pretty darn near impossible. Getting a rifle or a shotgun for hunting or something, I think is possible. I think. But you're probably not allowed to keep it loaded in your house or something like that. So the police have guns. All the federal agents have guns. There's security guards, at banks and other places that have licenses for guns, and they could take their guns home, sometimes. Private investigators normally don't get guns. There's some jurisdictions where they could, but it's pretty far and few between. They don't give guns to them. They could get a gun using another venue to get the gun, like they're retired police, or they're living in a jurisdiction where they give permits to anybody that's not a felon, and then they can have a gun. So the people in California are going to go up in arms like crazy. They're going to hate it. And they're going to want the left-wing fairy prosecutors to go after anybody that carries a gun with vigor for probably the brandishing law, and anybody that uses a gun, they're going to try to get them prosecuted. So they're going to try to create an atmosphere where, okay, it's legal to have your gun and carry it concealed in California, but you better make sure nobody sees it or you don't use it. That's the best they can come up with, and it's got to have its limitations, New York, the people are going to want the gun. Now, what's the implications in California on the criminals? Massive. Criminals like to stay in jurisdictions where the people can't get gun permits, because the chances of them getting killed for doing a burglary, a home invasion, a carjacking, a street robbery, a rape in the street, a purse snatching, or stuff like that, or pickpocketing. Pickpocketing isn't what you see on TV. They take a razor blade and they're on a bus or a subway with some guy that has a wallet in his back pocket. So they usually are working with at least one other person. So they try to block the view. And the person takes the straight single-edged razor blade and gently cuts the pocket. Okay? The next thing he does is he gently cuts the pocket lining, and the wallet falls out, and he nudges the person At the same time, the wallet falls out, so the person doesn't feel the wallet slipping in that. He immediately passes the wallet to his other person who gets out of there. Okay? And if anything happens, and the person grabs the guy or the woman, sometimes it's a woman that did this, right? They say, "What are you talking about? I don't know what happened to your wallet here. I don't have your wallet." And if the police come, they search him. He doesn't have the wallet. Well, he might have the razor blade, but that would be bad, so he's got to ditch the razor blade too. But generally, he passes it off to another person immediately, or she, and then they get out of there. Okay? Most of these big cities, they're not going to do a whole lot to a person for being a pickpocket because it's not a crime against person. Okay? Can they get the watch off the person's wrist without the person knowing and steal the Rolex or the Patek Philippe? Nah, I never heard of that. These watches usually have two things you've got to release to get it off, and metal bracelets. I don't get that. I've never heard of it happening to anybody in the watch community. Can a person come to you and put a knife on your carotid in the subway quietly with a little blade and say, "Give me your watch or I'm slicing your throat. And I'm just going to get off the train or get off the bus." Yeah, it's unusual. Usually they get you in a desolated space and present the weapon and start ripping the thing off your hand. They don't go after watches that much. That's a knowledgeable. I'm sure there's people like in the New York subway system that are watching the stations in Midtown and Lower Manhattan, where a lot of wealthy people live and a lot of offices for stockbrokers and stuff like that are, and bankers and whatnot, lawyers, and they're probably looking for these watches, and they may know what some of them look like. And if they see one, they may follow the guy, but they're not going to slip it off the wrist. Years ago, you guys are probably too old, too young to know this. They sold watches with expandable watch bands. So it was a metal watch band, one size fit all. And it expanded. And they, if you were playing ball and you swung the bat hard, the thing would probably start flying off your hand, So you had to take these things off before you did sports. But many, many watches came this way. So could they get that off somebody? Yeah, they could get it off and bang into them, slide it off, maybe. But I haven't seen people buying those watch straps in a million years, 40 years, They could spot these watches by people holding on in the subway to the handles, and they could see. So a lot of the wealthy people going back 30 years, even 40 years in New York, that took the subways to work because it was easy and convenient and fast. They lived in Manhattan typically, and they only had to go 3, 4, 5, 6 subway stops to get to the office, which took a few minutes, and they would do it. And in the rush hour coming and going, it was rather safe. A lot of cops, a lot of people. They would see, this. So what the guy would do to avoid attention is he would only buy a gold watch in white gold or platinum. It takes a very, 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 very well-trained eye and excellent lighting, which is not in subways or buses, to look at a watch and see that it's not stainless steel, it's white gold or platinum. Platinum's sort of darker, it's a little easier to pin. I mean, if you're out in the sunlight in a park at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah, a trained eye could figure out what it is, but not in a bus or a subway. The light's not good enough. So they would buy a watch with a leather strap, okay, or they would use white gold or platinum. And if they bought the leather strap, they had to use white gold or platinum too. But it was less flashy to the eye without the gold or platinum bracelet, you know. But the way to do it, if you were smart in an area like that, is when you went to work, get a $20, $30 Casio watch and put that on, and they're never going to give you a second thought. What are they going to do? Sell it for 50 cents? You know, they don't care. But they're not that into the watch. I mean, they'll take a shot with a watch, but you know, if they get a watch off of somebody that costs $35,000 or $50,000, they're going to get $500 for it at most. At most. It's a hot watch. The guy's going to report it. He probably has insurance. It's going to be a hot watch. You know. All right. So the criminals are going to go nuts in California and New York and New Jersey. They're going to have to leave because they're going to be getting shot. They cannot carry legally. They're felons. Nobody can carry legally in these jurisdictions, even if you're not a felon, but normally they're felons. What happens if they're felons and they get caught with a gun using it in the course of a crime? Now, it's one thing if they're felons and they're walking down the street and a cop just happens to stop them and searches them and finds the gun. That's not using the gun in the course of a crime. If he's conducting a rape or armed robbery in the street and he's a felon and has the gun illegally, well, he's probably going to go to the prison for 10 years because he's got to deal with a felon and the crime itself. And to compound it comes the using the gun in the course of the crime, which, you know, if you get him 20 years, it's going to get him quite a few years. So they don't like that because they know they can get caught. If they get caught and they don't hurt anybody, they're not going to get such a bad sentence. It's when you hurt somebody or you put a gun on them or a knife on them, it gets ugly. So if they use a knife, it's going to be better for them than a gun. So if they threaten somebody with a knife and they say, hey, give me your wallet or I'll stick you or poke you or cut you, a lot of people are just going to give them the wallet. Now, every now and then they come across some guy that, you know, is 6'5", weighs 260 pounds, benches 450 pounds, played pro football or college ball, and says he had it, and he lunges at the guy and grabs the knife and tackles him to the ground and cracks the guy's head open. But that's pretty rare. It happens. It's pretty rare. Also, they can get a guy that went to martial arts school for 6 or 8 years and looks at the guy and just decides the best thing to do is break his kneecap and then give him an elbow in the chin and then bang his head against the wall and walk away. You know, a lot of people that are martial artists, when this happens, they're not going to sit there and report it to the police, especially in a place like New York, because they don't know what the prosecutor's going to do for them. They're going to say, well, after you kicked him in the knee, he was no longer a threat for you. He was 4 feet away. He couldn't walk. He could, you know, and then they put you up on charges. So they just leave. I remember a deal in San Francisco. People used to go, I guess they still do, they'd go out at night before they went to bed and bicycle ride around the city where there were no cars. You know, like 11, 12 o'clock, and then the guy would take a half-hour bike ride, come home, take a shower, go to sleep. Or another way it would happen is they would get up, they go to bed at 8 o'clock, and they get up at 3 and take a 1-hour bike ride, come home at 4, take a shower, have coffee and breakfast, and they're in the office at 6 or something. You know, a lot of people are working in another time zone with the stock market and, you know, crazy things, right? So this guy was riding his bike, and a bunch of gang kids were there, and they wanted his bike. You know, there's people that buy bikes for $1,500, $4,000. He had an expensive bike, apparently, and, hey, give me your bike. And they got close enough to start grabbing them, and he took a Beretta out and shot some of them. And the guy knew how to shoot, and he hit them more than one. I don't remember, two or three. He shot them up. And did he stop? No, he kept going. He went home. Did they ever catch him? No. What was the prosecutor doing? He was making announcements on TV that we don't have a problem necessarily with you, something like that. We would just like to talk to you and have, an explanation of what happened. And the guy never shut up. He's not crazy. Did that stop the crooks from doing it? No, because it was a one-off event. If it happened twice, three times a month, it would stop them altogether from doing it. And that's what's going to happen with the gun permits. But the liberals in California were going to go nuts. New Jersey, I don't know much about New Jersey. I don't know what kind of liberal they got there. New Jersey's been a horrible carry concealed weapon jurisdiction for ages. The New York City police hate them. The Jersey State Police would stop New York police officers frequently because cops in New York would go to New Jersey. They have friends there, they were shopping, they went to an event or whatever, right? So they would get stopped, and they didn't give them speeding tickets per se. Not always, but what the New York City cop would do when the Jersey cop came over is he'd show him his badge and tell him he was a New York cop. And then the Jersey cops would then immediately say, "Are you carrying a gun?" And the New York cop could say a number of things at that point. He could say no, he could say yes, he could lie. If the cop was smart, what he would have done is put the gun in the trunk, unloaded, with the ammo in one container and the gun in another container, and then if it did come out, the chances of the cop making an arrest would have been greatly diminished. They probably wouldn't bother because I don't think Jersey would do that much to him for that. But you don't know. So the safest thing to do is, if you were going to go to New Jersey, is leave your gun at home. But New York City cops don't like to do that because they don't usually live right near the George Washington Bridge, and they just jump on the bridge and they're in Jersey. They don't like that. So they would usually take their gun. So the Jersey cops would question them again, and sometimes they'd search them. And they were arresting New York cops for carrying guns. And then the case sticks, they can't be a cop anymore. So they were nasty. So did the New York City cops do it to the Jersey cops? Not so much, but I had a friend that was a cop for a suburb in New York, and he pulled a Jersey cop over, and the guy showed him his Jersey police credentials, and he didn't give the guy a ticket, and he said, you guys are the worst, but I won't give you a ticket, And then he said, I'm not going to ask you if you're carrying a gun, you're the worst, So his approach was to try to be nice to them, and then they would stop doing it to the New York police. But Jersey had a lot of organized crime, and the government of Jersey wanted this type of a policy to protect them, their criminals that support them. All the governments are corrupt in the world, they're all run by Satan, including the government of New Jersey, the state. And they didn't want the New York police coming in there and bothering their constituents that were mafioso type people in New Jersey. That's what this was about, nothing else. Now it doesn't work because the cops can carry in all the states. It supersedes the state law. So they're going to go nuts in California, but I don't know what they're going to do about it. And the same in New York, it's going to be reversed. They're going to be grateful for this and against the government that tried to stop it. And the police in New York, going back to around the 1930s, the Sullivan Law, have been cracked down on guns in New York City for almost 100 years. And they were making money off it by having the police precinct captain issue a permit. He wouldn't issue a permit unless somebody gave him money and he knew who the heck they were, like a store owner that let the cops come in and gave him a great big discount or free goods, or fed him for free in a restaurant, or sold him stuff at half price, stuff like that, right? And then if he said, "Oh, I'm worried about getting robbed and this and that, can I get a permit?" The guy would say, "Yeah, you know how to shoot." And he said, "Well, we'll get one of the guys to take you out to the range," and and they give him the gun permit. They stopped that. In other places like California, you're allowed to carry a gun concealed in your place of work. I had a friend that was a prosecutor there, and he told me that cab drivers in California would carry a gun because that's dangerous. And when they got arrested, which would happen, they would plead that they were carrying a gun in their place of business, which is the taxi, and get off. But they had to go find a lawyer to fight the case for them. And the cops knew they were going to lose. I'm going to take a break. This is also going to lead to Trump opening the door for, if you have a permit in one state, it's good in every state, like a driver's license. I'll be right back. So Trump has been pushing for a gun law thing with the permits that if you have a permit in one state, it's good in every state. Now, why would the government want that? Well, it's going to win a lot of votes for Trump and the right wing and the gun lobby. That's one big reason. The other reason is quite a few states passed laws that said you have the right to carry, concealed or not concealed, and you don't need a permit. So now they create a reason for people to get a permit. When there's no permit, it makes it hard for the police. They stop the guy and they say, are you allowed to carry a gun? And the guy says, yeah, I'm not a felon, and he is. How are they going to know? They got to run a check on him. And what cause do they have to run a check? See, it's a problem. What if he says, I don't have my ID? Yeah. So, they would like everybody to have to get a permit. First of all, it makes revenue for the state, but they it'll still allow people to carry within their state without a license or a permit. But they're not going to be able to go to other states and do it because that's going to require a permit with reciprocity. So that's a lot of motivation to get a permit. Okay? Trump is probably going to push this hard now because before the states were bellyaching, well, we don't have the same criteria as the other states. And now the Supreme Court pretty much nailed it down to you do have the same criteria, There could be minor differences, not much. One of the things that California, New York, New Jersey, and other jurisdictions could do is charge, $4,700 for the permit. That'll get stopped by the courts, but it drags it out longer. Very few people would cough up that kind of money to get the permit. Some would. They could probably get away with something like $500. I think the court wouldn't do much to them for that. But if they started with $1,500 or something like that, I think they would get nailed for that. So that's another thing that Trump will do, which will make the states very mad. You got to understand, the governments of New York and California and Jersey and probably another 3 states are going to get extremely mad over this. Some poor junkie robbing people with a gun or a knife in New York City just so he could support his drug habit, that poor junkie robber is going to have to put up with some guy coming from Arkansas to see the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty, and when he tries to rob him, the guy's going to put a hole in his head. Poor junkie robber. See? They're not going to like that. Could you imagine all the people are going to start carrying on the airplanes now? Ooh, really, for everybody except the criminals. The police in New York like it because they're basically the only ones that get to carry a gun. Though when they start seeing civilians all over the place with guns, they're not going to like it. Police in New York think they're a big deal because they can carry a gun. But once the permits started getting issued all over America, no big deal. But it was a big deal in New York. They couldn't do anything about feds carrying a gun years ago, but now, past some years back, quite a few years, probably 12, 15 years ago, all the police can carry guns, retired or regular, can carry guns all over the United States. So New York had to put up with police from other jurisdictions running around with their guns. But still, that's police. They can live with that. But now they got to put up with anybody. So this has got deep implications if prophetic time allows for it, believe me. Let me check my notes. $28 million Iranians have no reliable source of water now, and their electricity is in bad shape off and on. They don't got electricity, a lot of them, and it's very hot this time of year. And they're going around multiple cities in Iran doing protests, but it's not going anywhere. They'll just take the tanks and gun them down in the street. Now, somebody finally did a deep study as to how the people in Gaza get money. I'll give you the crash course, because I was puzzled by this. Money is sent to a Palestinian living like in the West Bank via Western Union. The Palestinian gets the money out of Western Union, and he deposits it inside a Palestinian bank, which is probably in the West Bank, putting it in the guy's account that lives in Gaza, because they all get Palestinian bank accounts. Now, MoneyGram has been over with. You can't send money into Israel with MoneyGram, just out. Apparently, Western Union still works. There's only one agent in Israel for Western Union, and that's the Israeli Post Office. Another way to do it is to transfer money from a European bank account into an account at the Bank of Palestine, because the Europeans don't care about that. They'll send it to the Palestine Bank. And the people in Gaza have accounts for that. They have the Hawala method, which the Orthodox Jews used to use. And the way that works is, let's say you wanted to pay. I was trying to crack down on any of these things. And they also use cryptocurrency. And they got apps they use from the Palestinian bank. And Netanyahu's turning a blind eye to it. And the other thing is these oil-rich countries are putting money in their accounts. I'm certain of it. To some extent. I can't prove it. I don't have the proof, but I'm pretty sure of it. Very few of them work. There's like 80% unemployment, yet they got all this money. So where's it coming from? I want to read you a headline from a major Israel publication, a newspaper. Says that a father of one of the hostages warned against Gaza being invaded, which we're doing, saying the government only cares about political survival. In other words, Netanyahu staying in office doesn't care about the hostages. He's right. That's what you get on the headlines here. Oregon, wildfire doubles to more than 18,000 acres in 24 hours. That's not normal. Not normal. And we've been seeing a lot of that. Not a lot. We've seen several instances of that. And that's not normal. Let me check the live stream. And then I want to talk about artificial intelligence. Ah, Russia. Glad to have you. My grandparents came from Russia. Okay. Is artificial intelligence going to take people's jobs away? Yes, if prophetic time allows for it, which it won't. Are they conducting war with artificial intelligence? Yes and no. Can artificial intelligence launch a drone directed to a target and explode it? I don't believe it all. People do that. I don't believe drones have AI that does it. I don't think missiles have that either. The missile can hit certain coordinates and it's told to explode when it hits those coordinates, and they can tell that to a drone also. But it's not the drone isolating and finding targets and analyzing them and striking with the missile. They're not there yet. What they're trying to do is build self-attacking drones, where the drones just go up in the air and they go attack target packages. They're told, and they're smart enough to recognize enemy soldiers, enemy tanks, enemy jeeps, enemy this, enemy that, and they fly into it and explode, or a drone boat drives into the boat and explodes. Okay. Um, are they there yet? No. Are they close? No. Does it look like anytime soon they're going to trust drones to select their own targets? No. What about drone soldiers? Well, you see pictures of them and they could roll across the floor, they could kick somebody, they could jump and this and that. Are they actually smart enough to perform a duty in a military role? No. Have you seen a drone shooting a rifle? No. Or a droid or whatever you want to call them. What does Star Wars call them? Droids. Have you seen a droid or a robot shooting a gun? No. Are they close to robots shooting a gun? Probably. But are they close to letting the robot decide what a viable target is and then shoot it? They're not close to that. Are they a little bit away from that? No, they're massively away from that. That's a whole other ball game. They're not there yet. Okay. They would love to have drone armies or android armies where, Russia could take 25,000 robots and launch them into Ukraine. And they could probably build the robots to be relatively bullet resistant, although that would really increase the weight. It really would. But it might be worth it. They might try that. Because if they just use thin sheet metal, the enemy will shoot the robot and disable it. But if they built the robot to be bulletproof and the bullet bounced off the robots, so they're not there. Can they take jobs away from people with AI? Yeah, they're going to get there. What are they going to do first? Engineering and computer programming. So they're going to have the artificial intelligence make apps and make programs. Are they close to that? I think they're extremely close if they're not already doing it. Is that going to put a lot of high tech people out of work? Yep. Somebody's going to still have to be there to tell the artificial intelligence what they want and to test it and keep modifying it until they get what they want out of it. But yeah, that's a reality. We got a little machine in the house we've had for years that it makes a map of the house and then you charge it and you turn it on and it has a pad there with a little water tank and it keeps wetting it and washing the floor at the same time it vacuums. That goes around the house and does that. Is that a real smart device? No, it's dumb as a bag of hammers just about, but it does manage to get the house. But you got to be careful. It'll go lock itself in between furniture sometimes, or it's not so great, but it does do the work. Not as clean as a person would get it, but clean. It's kind of weird. So could they perfect cleaning houses better with a robot? Yeah, yeah, I think they will. They'll put more powerful vacuums in the robot and better floor washing capability. So yeah, they can have that happen. What about window washing? I don't know. That'll be a little harder. They could probably figure out a way to do that. What about cooking? Well, I don't know about that one. they have Ubers now in several cities that have no human operator. You call online, I guess you just punch in, you want an Uber and you're located here and you probably have an account with your credit card or something like that. And they direct the Uber to come to you with your coordinates, and the Uber pulls up, and I guess you see it, and you get in, and the Uber might ask you what the code number is for the transaction or what your name is, and you probably tell it, and it has voice recognition, and then it takes you to your destination. So you see, again, it's the same thing. It can transport product, be it human or other, to a location. If it knows the location and it knows the origin point where the loads of cargo, be it people or whatever, it can do that. And they're starting to use that. Now, if that gets, it's in several cities in America, if that gets going, then I imagine it'd be a brief period of time, probably more so than prophetic time allows, for people to buy a robotic car and just, you know, just start using it, if it's not illegal. So people wouldn't have to know how to drive. People could be disabled. People could be, you could take a 6-year-old child, put it in the car, tell the car where it needs to go, tell the 6-year-old child to not get out, buckle the child in, and you send it to somebody else's house, maybe the grandmother, and the grandmother goes out in the street and unbuckles the child, brings it in, and the Uber just goes away. So that might come around. Can they do the same thing with tanks and jeeps and stuff? Sure, they could. Would that allow the tank to conduct warfare, acquire its own targets, and shoot machine guns and artillery at targets it seems to want to attack? No, no, no. It can't think deep enough for that. No, no. Can a human operator point out a target somehow to the AI in the tank and tell the AI they want that target hit with artillery as soon as possible, and the tank does it? Yeah, they probably have that now or close to it. The same with machine gun, you know. Could they make the AI fly a plane and attack targets? Maybe. They'd have to. I'm sure they could have an AI fly a plane now, and I'm pretty sure the AI could direct the plane to the target. That we call that autopilot. It's been around for decades, and it could direct it. It could direct the plane to the target, correcting for wind speed and rain and other things and turbulence, and get to the target coordinates and drop a bomb or fire a missile at the target. It could do that. Do we think they've been doing that already? I think they've been testing it. I don't think they've been doing it. They don't want to lose $100 million stealth jet or a $20 million regular jet, but these things have autopilot, so the pilot takes off, right? And then puts on autopilot, and then the thing carries out the mission and comes home, and when it's ready to land, it wakes the pilot up and it lands the bird. So it's going to create less demand for work in a lot of industries. Like you can have a robot do food service. The cook puts the food, the robot comes into the kitchen, the cook puts it in some sort of a container the robot thing has. It's not going to look like a human. It'll look like a little cabinet on wheels or something, you know. And it programs what table number the robot should go to, right? And it goes to that table number and says, your food is here. And then the people take the food off the robot and put it on the table themselves and, so to speak, serve themselves. Is that something that they do now? Yeah, they can do that now. Would it work? Well, is the robot going to pick up the dirty dishes? I don't think so. Maybe they could get it to do that, but now they got to get it to work with like a hand. I don't think so. The cook puts the food on trays in this robot tower thing, like a cabinet. It drives to the table where the food was ordered. It says to them, your food is here. Please open up my tray and take your food, right? So takes his food, and then when they take the food, the robot says, tell me you've got the food and I'll leave, and you know, that kind of thing, voice recognition. And is that going to reduce some labor? Probably a little bit, but they still need to clean the tables. And what happens if there's a problem with the food? They got the wrong order, the food's no good, something's wrong with it. Well, who do they complain to? See, it's not that great. You're not going to be able to complain to the robot. How are you going to get the robot to come back? You know, it's, you know. Can a robot work on your car? Well, a computer with AI could probably, and they've been doing this for decades, tell you what's wrong with the car. But I don't think the computer, with or without AI, has the ability to open up the parts, take them out, look at what's wrong, fix them, replace them, put them back together, put the lube and the grease in. I don't see it. They're pretty far away from it. So is AI good for reading text and telling you what's going on and stuff like that? Yeah, but that's not analysis. That's just reading it and summarizing. Look, what the Satan bots want is not what they get. What they want is to build millions of robotic soldiers that can shoot guns and wage war for them, driven by artificial intelligence. You're never going to see the prophetic time. That would be probably 5 to 20 years before they got there. Never going to see it. They would also want to see robotic aircraft, boats that could conduct war, and also not conduct war. They'd want to see robotic ships with containers that can travel across oceans robotically, comfortable with. Okay. They would want the same with submarines. They would want tanks to be robots, jeeps, whatever, right? So then they would probably decide they want to eliminate a large amount of the population of the world that don't serve any purpose for them. And they would elevate themselves to royalty, immune from the law and taxes. And they would keep enough servants around to make their life comfortable. And they would need a number of people for workers for things the droids or the drones couldn't do. And Satan wants a massive amount of people worshiping him. So there's not going to be that much of an elimination. I would think if Satan had his way, he'd take the world from 8 or 9 billion down to 2 or 3 billion. Then there would be plenty of food, plenty of water, plenty of housing. And what would he use the people for? Well, to support the S-bots, however they needed supporting. It's so far-fetched, you're never going to see this. Never. Okay? I think we're about to see the end of the high-tech days. We're not going to see the internet, we're not going to see AI, we're not going to see this stuff anymore. It still remains to be seen if AI could conduct war through robots that it controls. Maybe, but I don't know. And they would probably love to use robots to wipe out the population. You notice how popular drones are, how they love using drones in war now? Oh, they love it. In World War II, America was banging out pilots like wholesale. I think it was maybe 3 months to generate a pilot. I don't think it was very long. So they had basic training, and then you went to flight school and they taught you stuff about, physics and how the plane flies, and then you were basically learning how to fly, learning how to take off, learning how to land, and then going from single engine trainer planes to double engine and quadruple engine, and then learning how to work the guns and dropping the bombs, and that was it. Now, while you were learning to be a flyer, they were teaching another guy to be a navigator, So the pilot might have had superficial knowledge of navigation, where the navigator knew what he was doing. They taught another guy to be a radio operator, so the pilot didn't have to worry about keeping tabs and reporting position and stuff like that. And the navigator was controlling the path where they were. And then when they got to the target, they had a bombardier that would take control of the plane, briefly maneuver the plane over the target with his bomb sight, which the pilot really maybe just had superficial knowledge of, and drop the bombs and then return control of the aircraft back to the pilot. Shooting the guns wasn't anything the pilot worried about in the bombers, because they had, guns in, they had a gun on the roof, they had a gun on the bottom, they had a gun in the front and in the back and on the sides. So they had 6 gunning posts in the plane, sometimes more, usually that. And he had gunners in each of these posts, and they were trained and they took care of the guns. So the pilot didn't navigate, he didn't work the bombs, he didn't work the guns, he didn't have to work the radio, but he was pretty fluent with the radio, and he could work the radio if he wanted to. So, and the navigator would tell him where they are, if they're on course or off course, and he would adjust the course. So it was rather easy to train pilots that way, right? And it was fast, but it was a blood bucket. They were training the gunners for just about the same, quite a long period of training for the gunners and the planes and the bombers, because they really wanted those gunners effective as possible. And they were actually more effective than you see with the Hollywood movies. They were actually pretty effective. Now, the fighter pilots was a different story. That was a more advanced pilot that probably became a regular pilot, and then they moved him on when he displayed good skills as a flyer. They moved him into being a fighter pilot, and now he had to work the guns, the navigation, the radio, and fly the plane. Back then it was usually a co-pilot, not always, but a lot of times they had a co-pilot. So the co-pilot would navigate and work the radio, and the pilot took care of the weapons, the bombs and the gun. And then you had other kinds of pilots. You had transport pilots and passenger plane pilots, and that was a similar thing. You had a pilot, you had a co-pilot. Well, and in the bombers too, you had a co-pilot, which was an assistant pilot. So you had a pilot, a co-pilot, a navigator, a radio guy, And these guys had a high death rate. If they survived 25 missions, they were taken out of the combat and they sent them home to train the other pilots. They probably gave them a month off when they got home. It was pretty fatal. I knew a guy in World War II that I believe was a gunner on bombers in Europe, and he told me they gave him a tankard of rum every time they went up, which was a big mug of rum. He said they were flying a little intoxicated because it was so scary they didn't want to go up. They would fly through flak for minutes at a time, and they would see planes all around them getting their wings knocked off and falling. If you managed to parachute out of the plane, which they had no ejection seats in bombers, Imagine a wing or a piece of the fuselage falls off and the plane's plummeting down like this at an angle like that. It's not going like this, it's going like that. How are you going to get up and walk around the plane and get to the door and jump out? You're not. And if you did, you'd be over enemy territory and you'd be in a war prison. And a lot of times when you landed, the local army would shoot you, or the civilians would shoot you because you were bombing their areas, you know. So they would love to do this with robots. And if they could make soldiers robots, they don't have to train an army. They don't have to feed an army. They don't have to house an army. They don't have to give water to the army. No training. No promotions. No payroll. No medical. It really helps them. They would just need a small army, maybe 1/10 the size, to manage the robots. That would be very high-tech people. You know, computers have been making motion pictures for many years. Star Wars movies in the 70s was heavily done with computers. I remember it came out in 77. I went to see it with a few friends. I didn't know what it was. One of the people I was going with, she was saying, "Oh, it's a space movie. It's really good. Everybody loves it." And I said, "Let's go." It was a nice day. I found a parking spot across the street from my Porsche, ran across the street. It was on Geary Boulevard in San Francisco. It was a big theater. Waited online, went in. I didn't know what the heck it was. So we sit down. It was a big screen theater. And it starts playing with this, you know, the text is coming at a weird angle, trying to explain to you what's going on. But you really couldn't understand because you didn't know who the planets were or any, you know. And then the next thing you know, you see this big spaceship. And it shows you the ship going across the screen. And it was a big screen with the sound, and we never saw anything like this in our life. Nobody in America ever did. And you're looking at it, and the spaceship was probably miles long. And you just looked at that, and then you said to yourself, "Oh my gosh, this must be some movie. I never saw anything like this." And then you start seeing little space fighters flying around, and, you know, people in the spaceship, and it got real interesting. Then it takes you to Tatooine or something like that, where Luke is, and you don't know who he is, and you see two moons, and it was just, we never saw anything like this. The kids had little carts that floated in the air. It was like, what the heck was this? We were all like, wow, I remember I went to see, I think it was 63 or 64, the first James Bond movie. I didn't know what James Bond was. A friend of mine says, "Come on, let's go see it." It was at a theater in the Bronx called the Globe Theater. And I said, "What is it about?" It was, Dr. No, and I didn't know, "Oh, it's about a G-man, government guy. It's really good, really good." So I didn't know. So, okay. So we went to the matinee. It was, I don't know, probably 25 cents or something, 50 cents, I don't know, probably a quarter. And we went in, we got our soda and our popcorn, and we sat down, and that was really a good movie. you know? And then, I don't know what, 2 years later? From Russia with Love came out, or a year later, or 2 years later. You know, and that was something special. You know, you see James Bond walking around in some mansion's courtyard and somebody kills him, and you say, what? They killed James Bond? That's how it starts? What is this? And then they peel the rubber mask off him, and it's not James Bond, and you say, wow, I never saw that before, you know? And that was really a good movie. And then they came out with Dr. What is it, no, Goldfinger. That might have been the best Bond movie they ever made. And that was just a superb movie with the Aston Martin. I remember I was a teenager. I went down to the Aston Martin dealership in Manhattan, and they had the actual car there. And I wanted to see it. So me and a friend got on the subway. We drove down there. We went into the dealership, and they had the Aston Martin there. We looked in the sunroof, and they had a box of those golf balls that were named in the movie. I don't know, like Dunhill 5 or something, you know. And they had the machine guns sticking out, and they had the bulletproof plate in the back, and they had the button on the stick shift up where you could hit the eject. And, you know, it was really, you know, people really got impressed with that. They were making songs about James Bond, hit songs about the James Bond movies. I had a friend that was in the counterintelligence corps of the Army some years later, and we were talking about it. And he said, yeah, when it came out, we all went to go see it, you know. They were the real thing, you know, well, they were really spy hunters, like Bond, really. And they were going to see the movie. And, but the Star Wars came quite a few years later, like about 15 years later. Before the Star Wars came, they had the Superman movie. And when you went to see the first Superman movie, it was in the early 70s, I believe. It was on a big screen, and they were huge screens, and it had something like wraparound sound, you know. And it wasn't as good as it got later on, but you thought you were fine. I mean, you really thought Superman was fine. It starts out, he goes to rescue a cat out of the tree, and he just kind of floats up, you know, and grabs the cat and brings the cat down, you know, and you said, wow, I never saw anything like that. And then Star Wars came along, and that was, you know, in 77. And all the little kids had Star Wars blankets, Star Wars lunch boxes, Star Wars figures, toys, and they had, oh, it was just all of this stuff, you know. And the next one that came out was even better. I don't remember what the names of these were, but they had Harrison Ford. They had that the woman that played Princess, whatever her name was, and they had the same crew basically in there, Luke and Darth Vader, and then they did 3 of them. I think the third one ended around 82, 83. And then that was it, except they did spin-offs. They had cartoons for kids, and they made one movie for kids about Ewoks and stuff like that. And that was really about it, those 3. And then they had books and comic books about it, and cartoons, and kids that got exposed to Star Wars stayed with Star Wars till they grew up, you know. And then in the 1990s, they released another 3 of them, which Luke, whatever his name was, the same guy, Lucas, or the other guy, I don't remember the name of that. they released the next three. So it was the same thing, except that in the first one they were shooting people, the first three, and in this one they didn't want to shoot people. So they created droids, which were robots, and they were shooting robots mostly. But they were still pretty darn good, you know? And then they did the last three, I don't know, within the last 10 years or 15 years. And I watched some of them, and I would think I watched all of them basically online. I don't think I went to the movies. And they were all fairly lousy. The figures were not, the characters were not captivating. They weren't, you know, they were flat, you know. Yeah. So, but that really changed a lot. But they were promoting all the droids and the robots, and you know, they had a heavy satanic rift in it with the Jedi, and you know, may the Force be with you, and this kind of thing. You know. By the way, I was talking to somebody or writing somebody about martial arts today. I just want to explain this to you in case your kids or you are getting involved in it. Most of the martial arts are satanic, and you're not going to realize how satanic they are unless I illuminate you to it, which I will now. Or you get into it on a very advanced level and they start explaining to you what's really going on. Now, college wrestling is not satanic, okay? They don't pray to a photograph of some college wrestling master and bow down to it. That's idolatry. You don't bow down to a picture of a dead guy, okay? That's what they do with karate and jiu-jitsu and judo and stuff. That's junk, okay? Regular American boxing is not demonic. They don't meditate. They don't bow down to anybody. They don't do anything like that, okay? They don't have that. And if you really wanted to get some young guy or something to learn martial arts, or you wanted to, I would advise find some college wrestling teachers or regular wrestling and do regular wrestling, because they don't do any of that bowing and meditating or none of that stuff. And boxing, they don't do it there either. Or the best is to find people that teach a self-defense course. So the criteria, I would say, is number one, they don't wear uniforms. If you go to some martial arts school and they're telling you to wear a uniform, just walk out. Why in the world would you want to learn how to fight barefoot unless you were a professional lifeguard on a beach walking around barefoot all day? And you don't even walk around barefoot on a beach because the sand gets so hot. So they don't even walk around barefoot. So why would you want to learn something stupid like that? Right away, off the top, it's stupid. Number two, why would you want to learn how to fight in karate or judo gis, which is what they call their uniforms? They have it's stupid. You don't wear clothes like that. These judo gis and the karate gis, if you wear them, if you grab them and you pick someone up and roll them over your body, you're putting a lot of pressure on the garment, especially a judo gi, and it's going to stay intact because it's built for that. But a regular guy that has a shirt from Walmart, you do that, the shirt's going to rip apart, and he's not going to roll over your back. It's stupid. It's stupid coming and going. And if you start hearing them, they talk, Hirogiri, or Ni, Si, San, Yo, Lo, Ro, counting in Japanese, run away. It's a waste of time. Okay? You're learning a lot of garbage that you don't need. Will it make you a better fighter? Yes. but they're generally demonic. Now, when I learned Shotokan karate as a teenager, they didn't bow to anybody. They didn't have us meditate that I remember at all. And it was highly disciplined with a lot of respect for the instructor, but he was still a nice guy. And I didn't know, I don't remember demonic stuff in that. But those days are gone. That was the old Japan Karate Association. They came to America. It was a non-profit. The fees, the dues every month were dirt cheap because it was a non-profit, and it was a heavy emphasis on physical conditioning. Okay, there is no chi, chi or ki. In the Japanese, it's ki or ke, whatever ki. It doesn't exist. Let me just prove to you it doesn't. Chi means that you can gather the energy of your body and control it and project it. So if a guy's coming at you with a kick to your abdomen and you don't have time to block it, you put your ki there, your chi there or your ki there, and the opponent's foot is going to kick you and nothing's going to happen because the chi of your body is, that energy is repelling the force. What a load of malarkey. It's non-existent. These karate instructors and martial arts instructors, at least 90% of them, are bogus. And most of them are saith bots, not all. The ones that go out of business or never get a really big school, they're not saith bots. They're just regular people. Running a karate school is not a highly attractive job for saith bots. First of all, you got to spend a number of years learning how to get good at it, and you're not earning money while you're learning, so right away they don't like that. And it's a hard life. You got to, be a teacher. Well, you see a guy that owns 3 or 4 karate schools in a community, and he's charging all the kids, I don't know, $100 a month, and he has 800-900 kids paying him $100 a month. That's a saith bot. Okay, no doubt about it. But a guy with a school that's got 30 or 40 kids and he goes in the evening and teaches them and stuff like that, he may or may not be a saith bot. It depends what he teaches them. But if the chi was real, they could go, now they say when they take their hand and they break the ice, that's because they're taking all their body's energy and transferring it into their palm of their hand, and they hit it, and that's not true. What the value of this is like boxing. When a boxer punches you, I mean a real boxer, not a transactional jerk on the TV. Many boxers are transactional, by the way, loaded with them, loaded, the big famous ones, yes. But they will pivot the weight of their body and the stepping, they'll step forward, just stepping. If you just put your hands at your side and you rapidly step forward into a person, you can knock them over from the force of just banging into them, right? Okay. So I'm giving you a really condensed crash. They use the hips, the stepping forward, the knees, and also the timing is key, and the muscles and the speed and everything. And when they hit somebody, it is a powerful shot. Okay? Don't kid yourself. It's very, very powerful. And they know how to land the shot where they want, when they want, at distance, how to close distance, how to protect themselves. And they're in condition. These guys run 3 to 7 miles a day. They take medicine balls and bounce it off their stomach. That's how they protect against hitting in the stomach. Not with their chi. They don't even know what chi is. They don't ever meditate. Go into a boxing gym and you see some schmuck sitting on the floor with his hands crossed going, before he gets in the ring. They beat him to a pulp. You're never going to see that in a boxing gym. I don't believe. That's idiotic behavior. You're not going to see that. So what do these crazy, what do they do? you know, they practice, they do push-ups, they do sit-ups, they do all sorts of exercises. Some use weights, some don't believe in weights. It makes your muscles tight. It really does. And they stretch and they practice with other fighters with impact. Okay? So, and it's good. It works. Okay? Is it the best martial art? No. But it's based on, body conditioning, timing, coordination. It's not, or the sound of one hand clapping. It's none of that garbage. So, um, if it was real, the chi was real, what would happen is these old karate and kung fu masters would go to the MMA, where you can become a multimillionaire within less than a year, okay? And they would enter those fights and they would win because they couldn't get hurt, even they were old, because when the other guy tried to kick them in the chin, their chi would go up there and the kick wouldn't do anything to them. And when they hit the other guy would fall back 8 or 10 feet from the tremendous power of the chi. It's all bullcrap. It's not in there. It's not real. They're liars. Okay? There is no chi. All right? It's a joke. And the guys at the top know they're not controlling the chi. It's a joke. Now, I've seen guys in karate school settings inside and out where he has the students come line up or attack him, and he goes like this with his hand, boom, and the student falls over. What's going on there? Demons. The people that he's pushing over are submissive to him and giving permission directly or indirectly. And he's going like that, telling him he's projecting his chi at them, but it's a demon pushing him. That's all it is. I know a guy told me he was studying Aikido in Japan, and the Aikido instructor told all the students to attack him at once, and he was just gently pushing them, and they were going flying 15, 20 feet. Huh? Aikido is a BS art. It's cock and bull for the most part. And what happened is demons. I've seen people fight, third, fourth degree Aikido guys that are even just MMA fighters, without belts and stuff, and they mop the floor with the Aikido guy. What's the actor's name? Steven Seagal. It says he's a heavy black belt in Aikido and stuff like that. And Steven Seagal knows things about fighting. But he also used to make these movies with, 10 or 15 people at the school would attack him and he would roll them around. I never saw him throw anybody 20 feet or anything like that, but he would roll them and stuff. That's all prefabricated. You know what the karate instructors do? They sit there and they say, attack me. And now what happens? They know the attack is coming. They get themselves 3 or 4 feet away from you and they wait for you to kick them or punch them. What do they know is coming? They know you're going to kick them or you're going to punch them or you're going to try to grapple them, right? They know that. So they wait for it and then they make themselves look good. Do you ever see people go there and say, okay, you attack me? I could go do that. Well, I'm too old today, but a few years ago, I could do it to the guys that were, masters of 30, 40 years experience that wouldn't have any trouble doing the same thing. What the heck is a guy going to do to me? If he does a flying kick, he's going to get hurt with me. It's like if you know what you're doing and some guy does a flying kick, it's like happy days are here again. But all you really have to do with a flying kick is go 8 or 10 inches to the side or something, and he's going right by. But what happens when he lands? Well, in a real situation, you'd rush in and just give him a really good front kick in his kidney or something. And good night for him. He's going to be in bad shape after that, because you got to recover from your land with a flying kick. You can't just land and go into fight mode. It's all it's all bogus nonsense. When you got MMA and they started learning about real, and MMA is not real fighting. You got to understand that. You can't attack the eyes. You can't attack the trachea. Okay? I don't even think they do attack the head, but you can't go through the eyes, right? You can't go into the trachea. You can't kick a guy in the knee and break his knee. You can't stomp on the top of his foot and break his foot. You can't grab if he's up there like this, there's ways you can push his fingers back and break his fingers, or kick him in the fingers and break them. You can't do that. So there's a million things in MMA you can't do. So it's still a sport. It's not pure street fighting, but they do pin the other guy down and punch him in the face repeatedly. That's pretty bad. I don't know why people would want that. I wouldn't enjoy it. But that's like what goes on in the boxing ring. The boxing ring, they wear gloves. MMA, not necessarily do they wear gloves. Okay? So, these karate masters, 20, 30 years experience, were trying to come in there and dominate the MMA fighters, and they weren't. The guys that know boxing and MMA and know grappling, like wrestling, or you could call it judo or jiu-jitsu, were the ones that would be the dominant ones that knew both. They would be the best fighters. You can't make it just with grappling in MMA, because the other guys are going to punch and kick you out. And you can't make it just with punching and kicking, because the other guy is going to try to wrestle with you. So you really need a skill set in both. And the skill set in both has a name. It's called MMA fighting. So if you studied MMA fighting, would you be an effective martial artist? Yes. Would you be meditating and talking about your chi and praying to photographs of masters that are dead? No, they don't do any of that. That's why it's real. They don't have any of that crap. Do they wear special uniforms? No. They might practice without shoes on, because it's not a pure martial art, it's a sport. So when they do have the meets inside the cage, they're barefoot typically. So yeah, you'd probably have to put up with some of that. You don't ever want to train barefoot. When they train real fighters and special forces, when they used to, now they don't so much do it anymore, but when they used to, they trained them with street clothes on. They normally wore long pants, a t-shirt, and boots. So they wore military pants, they wore boots, combat boots, and some kind of shirt. And that's how they trained. And that's how they practiced fighting. They didn't go barefoot and wear artificial clothes. That's retarded. The only time that makes any sense is if you have a lifestyle where you walk around barefoot and you wear those kind of clothes all the time, which I don't know anybody that has such a lifestyle. Even in Japan, would they have a lifestyle like that, So, the Chi is a joke. So Tai Chi, what goes on in Tai Chi? Tai Chi is a type of Kung Fu that is a very bloody, deadly, brutal form of fighting. When they go like this, and they, dragon sweeping tail, bird plucking weeds, or I don't know, whatever they say, these moves, they do them slow. When you know what those moves are, and I studied many systems. I created my own martial arts system years ago. I was in it very, very many years. And I realized they were all bogus. So I made my own system. I gave it a cute name, Jew Can Do. But the Lord never had me teach it. Maybe someday, but He doesn't want me teaching it. And it's heavily with weapons. You got to be an idiot to go into combat without a weapon. And I'm not talking guns. I'm talking the other kind of weapons. You got to be a moron. Because why would you? And as I learned weapons, and I believe the Lord was teaching me about it, I learned that if you get one knife and you fight some of these martial arts guys, they might get lucky and get the knife away from you, maybe. I'm not talking about amateur hour. I'm talking to somebody that knows how to fight with a knife. Now, if you've got two knives and you have backup knives stuck around in behind your neck, in your shoes, in your belt, in your pocket, whatever, it's even worse for them. But let's say you just got two knives. The chances of a guy with 35 years of karate or kung fu successfully taking you out or taking your knife away is 1%. There might be some nut out there that can kick so fast and so hard that the human eye wouldn't catch it in time. I mean, and you were sloppy enough to let him get close. I mean, but the chances are 1 in 100. And the chances of the guy doing it and walking away unscathed are pretty slim, But they're all. So what do they do in Tai Chi? Well, the real Tai Chi that's deadly is not being taught. You're probably never going to find a real instructor. A real Satan bot instructor knows there's no such thing as chi. He knows it's done with demons. So if he wanted to teach you for real the moves, they would be basically coordination, muscle stretching, stuff like that. They would be rather effective, okay? Because it's a obscure art form or martial art form. But it's got its flaws as a system. Bruce Lee said, the way is no way. What he meant is the way to fight is you don't follow a system. Why? Because they know that the human can maybe as a maximum learn to do 12 or 14 moves reflexively. Beyond that, you can't. Nobody can. Now, maybe occasionally somebody will come along with a great set of reflexes and learning ability, and they'll do 16 or 17, but that's about it. So why do they teach 150, 200, 300 moves to people? Because it pays the bill. It keeps the people coming back month after month after month. And if people are too dumb to realize that you can't reflexively learn all that stuff. So I boiled my system down to about, I think, 14 moves, something like that, so that people could actually learn it, in addition to the weapons. So, what I did to devise the weapon system is I would take knives and swords and hit the speed bag, the punching bag, the blah, 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 I would hit it with edged weapons. Well, they were dulled, I would dull them. And learn the coordination for the swords and the knives that way. And then I had a top and bottom bag, if you know what that is, on elastic. It has elastic on the top and bottom. And I would go and hit the top and bottom bags with the swords, 2 at a time, with knives 2 at a time, always 2 at a time. If you're going to use edged weapons 2 at a time, it's going to be a rare day you're going to lose. No, I don't ever really understand why most of the Romans and the knights of old and all of those characters were running around just fighting with one sword, unless the people teaching them didn't have the brains to figure out that you need two. Now, the Japanese that were really into this, they fought with 2 swords. They carried a short sword and they carried a longer sword. Did the Chinese get into that? No, not that I'm aware of. No. So, you got to be an idiot to practice a martial art without a weapon. I mean, you could use nunchaka. You could even fight with a belt and give people a lot of trouble with a belt. You can block with a belt. You can wrap it around somebody's neck. You could wrap it around their arm. Better than nothing. You could whip them with a belt in the eyes. What do they do then when you damage their eyes? There's a lot of things that, you can do. Get wear shoes that are safety shoes with the steel caps in the shoes, right? See what happens when you kick somebody with boots with big, thick Vibram soles and the steel cap in the toe. Work shoes, right? Engineer boots, things like that. What happens when you kick them in the shin, when you stomp on them with that? It's curtains. That's a weapon. It's like brass knuckles for your feet. It took me decades and years to figure all this stuff out. I had a huge carton of videos from all the different martial arts systems, like 6 videos, 8, this and they would sets, and I would study them. And I was learning what they're promoting, and it was all garbage. It's just garbage. So Tai Chi, so they take the moves and they slow them down, and they tell the people, use your chi, get your energy up and push your energy out, and push your energy here and there, and you'll learn how to control your chi, and you'll be healthier, and you'll this and that, and really? What's going on there is the guy is an S-bot teaching you. If there's people following this, he's an S-bot, and he's teaching people basic. He's doing one or two things. He's teaching old people, you see it's popular with old people, basic movement and, stretching and agility, and yeah, it's got, some value, but what he's doing is he's putting demons into the thing, and the demons are making you feel good and making you think you're getting a lot more of a benefit, and you're moving your chi around when it's the jackass demon giving you the feelings. Take the guys that do the shows with the lions and tigers. You think they don't put demons in the lions and tigers? Why do you think that? Why would you think they don't do that? You think they just get a lot of nice lions and tigers that want to jump through hoops of fire and things like that for them because they're so nice to them? And they get in a cage with these guys and are able to control them, and I don't. I think it's demons. And that's the same with the martial art guys. The guys with the schools that are going to make it are generally S-spots. A guy with a little school that just does it because he loves the martial arts, and there's nothing wrong with that. The guy doesn't know any better. And he has 20, 30 kids. They rotate, they come in, he teaches them best it's a little operator. And he's probably not a Satan bot, and he probably believes the chi is real but doesn't know any better. The guy that told me that story about the MMA was a guy named Emerson, who owns a knife company and is an accomplished martial artist. He's rather old now, and he had a hip replacement, and his day was 25, 35 years ago. That's when he was in his day, or maybe 20 years ago, even 20 years ago. And he was an excellent martial artist, but he wasn't following a system. He was just following fighting. And he said, if you want to show me a move and I can't learn it in 15 minutes, I'm not interested. And that's the right attitude. It shouldn't be more than 15 minutes. The only thing I know is when you train somebody in martial arts, it takes a long time to teach them how to walk, let's say, how to control their weight, how to make sure they push their whole body forward with a punch or a kick, and pivot, turn, go backwards, go sideways. It takes about 6 months, really. I don't know how to do that fast. Once you get them there, or they studied martial arts and know how to do that, you can really take care of it. You can learn quick. But all of these martial arts are bogus. They're all satanic teachers. They're all talking about crazy, wacko, freaking energy theories that are not real. Every one of them Jiu-jitsu has it, judo has it, karate has it, kung fu has it, aikido has it, taekwondo has it. Thai kickboxing is worse. What they do before they go into the ring, and they pray and they throw rice around. I mean, it is even worse. I mean, it's, the Japanese sumo wrestlers is worse. They do the throwing the rice and they run around naked in the ring, just about disgusting, but they do it. Um, and that's not even fighting. They stand inside a circle and they try to get the other guy to go out of the circle. Now, admittedly, if you're up against a 390-pound sumo guy that exercises and has a lot of power and all this extra body weight, and the guy throws himself at you as quick as he can, um, and he's going to hit you with his body, you got a real problem. The only real answer to him is to get out of his path, which, if you're agile, you should. And then he's going to miss you, and then you kick him as he goes by. But if he gets you, you got a real problem. Or if he just jams into you, it's like a dog. I had, a 125-pound Neapolitan Mastiff. It was a nice dog. And if he ran at you, the vet told me this once, because when I took him into the vet, he would tie his mouth closed with rawhide. He didn't want to take a chance, So he told me, if this dog runs at you and hits you with his mouth closed, he says you're probably going to the hospital just from the impact when he hits you. So imagine a sumo wrestler over 300 pounds hitting you. You might be in intensive care for a week or two. They're dangerous people. But they're not healthy people, and they usually stop it by the time they're in their 30s before they die, because they overfeed themselves every day. It's very unhealthy, very unhealthy thing. So the Tai Chi thing is, there is no chi, there is no energy, and if you want somebody to learn boxing or fighting, the best is if you could find the military courses. They call them sometimes jiu-jitsu, but they're not really jiu-jitsu. They run about 6 months, and they teach blows and grappling and all that, and they're very effective. You don't need to go for 20 years. That's nonsense. You go for 20 years because you're learning to do things that you're never going to use in a fight. There's a lot of these guys that 3rd, 4th degree black belts, they get their head handed to them in street fights because they don't have real world orientation. They're in this artificial world of martial arts where they're trying to learn hundreds of different moves, and they don't know what to do when it happens. And the ones that go sparring a lot in competition, they're going to be reasonably effective in a street fight because they're used to fighting, but there's not that many of them that do that. So anyway, that came up. So sending kids to these martial arts schools with all the discipline and the bowing and thing is usually a bad idea. And they all are based on some crazy wacko energy theories. Now, I'm not sure. Aikido talks about it. Yeah, they talk about it. What they base it on is that when you attack them, they generally won't attack you. Like if you're there and you tell the Aikido master, go ahead, attack me. He's probably not going to want to do it. I mean, what could he do? He could try to lunge at you and grab you. He could try to hit you, headbutt you, kick you, knee you. That's about it. What else is he going to do? Spit at you? That's about it, right? So you're waiting for it. So of course you could stop it, I mean, yeah, it's not hard. It's coming. But, when you get into street encounters, number one, it's rarely just with one person. If it's one person, it's normally you're as dumb as they are, and the guy provoked you into a fight, and the two of you are deciding you're having a fight. It's a lot easier to just not have the fight with the guy, walk away, let him insult you, and then tell yourself you won the fight, you didn't get hurt. That's what smart people would do. Dumbbells get into one-on-one fights, but when you get into the 2 and 3-on-1, that's a horse of another color. But I've seen videos of these Aikido guys trying to take out other fighters, and they fail miserably. Okay, so it doesn't have great application. It has application in the dojo where they know it's coming. You know, like I say, you say, go ahead, attack me. Go to a karate school, and the guy says, oh, here, I'll show you, attack me, you know. And you say, no, 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 you attack me. And most of them won't do it. They'll stop. Well, what kind of training do you have? That's the first thing you'll hear from them. You know. And then if you start telling them you're not in any system that hands out belts, they get a little nervous because that's real world fighting, and they don't do real world fighting. They don't like that. So they get a little nervous. Jet can do, which is what Bruce Lee's system was. They don't do belts. They didn't wear the uniforms. And they were highly effective. That's a pretty good system, but you got to find a way to do it without wearing the uniforms or without bowing. But that's a system you could find. Now, the other one out there is Krav Maga. They don't bow to anybody. They don't wear uniforms per se, and they don't. Some of them actually do now. But is that another Satan bot system? Absolutely. Is it effective? No. It's like any other system. If you're going to fight people that aren't trained fighters, it's effective. It's too many moves. They do things like they have a guy run in a circle, and then they get the other group to attack him, and you know, he gets used to getting hit by multiple opponents at the same time. And you know, that's not necessarily Krav Maga. That's learning how to street fight, and it happens to take place in a Krav Maga school. That's all. But it's just another dumbbell system. It's pointless to learn it. It's too many moves you're never going to use. But in the absence of a good teacher that's going to teach you a realistic system, and Jet Can Do or Krav Maga probably works better because you're away from the sicko-demonic aspects of it, you know, which they took that over when it started basically in the 50s. Jerome Mackey with judo schools and stuff. I'll be right back in a minute. Quick break. They made themselves a lot of money in America with using demons. Yeah, but I'm back. I'm still going. All right. Let's. What? No, no. Let me check the live stream for questions, and then we'll get into our spiritual warfare. Today we'll hand the devil his head again. I'm open for suggestions about how to conduct warfare today, but I'll think of some things. First thing we'll do is help all of ourselves, the believers. There's been a lot of S-spots in here today. Okay, let's try helping ourselves first, and then we'll go. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I ask you, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, to loose upon all the true believers with the true gospel your peace, your shalom, your joy, your relaxation, your calm, your patience, and in addition, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, the faith, tongues, interpreting tongues, wisdom, discernment, all the gifts of the Spirit on the people, and may signs and wonders follow them when they preach the true word. And I ask for this loosing, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, I bind all the unclean spirits from attacking all the true believers with the true gospel or their household. They shall not be able to create plots using themselves or people that serve them to, or any other people, to make trouble or problems for the true believers, to cause them to spend or waste money, to chip them out of money, to stop them from getting jobs or business deals or clients or customers, to not discriminate against them in any way, to not communicate with them in any way, including feelings, thoughts, ideas, or notions. They shall not impersonate being angels of light to the true believers with the true gospel. And these commands are set in place now with these bindings are set in place now with no time limitation on them. They just keep running. And I ask this of you, my Heavenly Father, for all the true believers with the true gospel, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. I felt better. Since we're all headed to Israel, let's go to work on Israel, and then we'll go to work on America and some other countries. Well, we can do it with several countries at the same time. No, we've been doing that enough. They're taken care of. Let's work on some other things. Let me think. Let's hit the universities. They teach a lot of this sick stuff in the universities, don't they? Sure they do. Let's hit the 25 largest universities in the world. Okay, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, I bind the unclean spirits from being inside any person that owns, operates, controls, or works for, or is employed by, in any way, shape, or form, as a contractor or an employee of any of these universities. When I read the name of the university out, all the unclean spirits in these people have to depart from them immediately, and shall never return to them again. And I further bind all the unclean spirits to go into any of these people for 1 year continuously, beginning when I put out the name of the university, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree, and here we go. The first university is Indira Gandhi National Open University. Next is National University Bangladesh. Next, Anadolu University. We're getting tongue twisters. Next, California Community Colleges System in California, all of them. And it supplies B'Shem Yeshua Mashiach to all the schools these universities have. Allama Iqbal Open University, that's Pakistan. Laureate Education Incorporated. Bangladesh Open University. Universitas Terbuka in Indonesia. National Technological Institute of Mexico. Trib Huvan University in Nepal. Savitriba Pune University in India. Chaudhary Karan Singh University. University of Mumbai. Ramkanama, oh gosh, wait a minute, I got Ramkhamhang University in Bangkok. Thai language. National Open University of Nigeria. California State University System. University of the Punjab. That's Pakistan. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University in India. University of South Africa. University of Delhi. Payame Noor University. Sikkim Manipal University in India. State University of New York. National Autonomous University of Mexico. National Center for Distance Education. I have all this binding. I submit to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can feel free to agree with it. Let's get the ballet companies. They like their ballet, don't they? Okay. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, my Heavenly Father, I bind all the unclean spirits from being inside anybody who owns, operates, controls, works for, or is a member of any of these ballet troupes or companies of ballets. They shall immediately depart from the ballet when I state its name, and never return from the people in the ballet, and never return unto these people again. And I further command the unclean spirits to depart from every person that attends a performance of these ballet troupes in the future for the next 1 year continuously. Whenever they go to watch the ballet, as soon as the ballet starts, you unclean spirits have to depart from these people, and you cannot warn them beforehand of this, nor can you explain what happened after the fact when you left them. And these commands are set in place now, these bindings are set in place now for 1 year continuously, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree. And here we go. The first ballet is the Bolshoi Ballet. The next one is the Mariinsky Ballet. The next one is Paris Opera Ballet. American Ballet Theater. New York City Ballet. The Royal Ballet. San Francisco Ballet. National Ballet of Canada. The Australian Ballet. Houston Ballet. Dutch National Ballet. Boston Ballet. The Joffrey Ballet. Pacific Northwest Ballet. Miami City Ballet. National Ballet of Cuba. Vienna State Ballet. English National Ballet. Stuttgart Ballet. National Ballet of China. Royal Danish Ballet in Copenhagen. Berlin State Ballet. The Scottish Ballet in Glasgow. Philadelphia Ballet. Ballet West in Salt Lake City. And I submit all this binding to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can fulfill it, and please agree with it, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Let's get the opera troops, or the opera theater, or the opera companies. Just go after everything that big money can buy. What does it take you to go watch a ballet with a good seat today? $300, $200, you know? Who's got that kind of money? We'll get the symphony orchestras after the operas. They like that too. Wait, what happened here? Something went off. All right, I have to start over. Let's see. No, it didn't. I gotta do this again. I don't know what happened. This thing's got a problem. It rotates pages on you sometimes and you get messed up. Oh, it never went through. All right, now it will. Okay, my heavenly Father Jehovah, I bind all the unclean spirits from remaining in or being inside any person that owns, operates, controls any of these opera companies, or as an employee or works for these opera companies as an independent contractor in any way, shape, or form, or a performer. You unclean spirits shall immediately depart from these opera companies when I read the name of the opera company out, and you shall never return again to these same people for 1 year continuously, and for 1 year continuously from when I read the name of the opera company out, you shall depart from any person who attends a performance or a rehearsal of this opera company. You shall immediately depart from them as soon as the show starts with the opera company. You shall never warn them of this beforehand, nor shall you ever explain to them what happened after the fact when you left the people. And these bindings are set in place now for 1 year continuously, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. And the first opera company is Metropolitan Opera. Next, Royal Opera House in London. Then we go to Paris Opera, Vienna State Opera, Teatro alla Scala in Italy, Bolshoi Theater, I guess they do opera. Oh, the Bolshoi Opera. Bolshoi Theater, the Bolshoi Opera. Mariinsky Theater, Marlinsky Opera in St. Petersburg, Russia. Bavarian State Opera in Munich. It's Bavarian State Opera, I guess, in Munich. Lyric Opera of Chicago. Lyric Opera of Chicago. San Francisco Opera. Los Angeles Opera. Houston Grand Opera. English National Opera. Deutsche Oper Berlin. Teatro Real in Madrid. Grand Theater del Liceu in Spain. Santa Fe Opera, Washington National Opera in D.C., the Atlanta Opera, Dallas Opera, Seattle Opera, Teatro di San Carlos in Italy, La Fenice in Venice, and Sydney Opera House in Australia. And I do all this submission of binding to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can certainly agree. Now we'll do the symphony orchestras. I got a typo. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, my Heavenly Father, Jehovah, I ask for this binding on the symphony orchestras of the world that I'm going to read the names off of. I would ask for binding in that the unclean spirits have to depart from every person that owns, operates, controls, works for, is employed, or a performer in any of these symphony orchestras. The unclean spirits must immediately come out from them. They're bound from being in them, and the unclean spirits may never return unto them again. And any person who ever sees any performance of these orchestras after I read the name out for a period of 1 year, the unclean spirits have to depart from them as soon as they are beginning the show. As soon as the show begins, they unclean spirits must depart from all these people watching the show. And these bindings are set in place for 1 year continuously. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with it. And the first one is Berlin Philharmonic. Next is Vienna Philharmonic. Then we go to Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam. London Symphony Orchestra, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, New York Philharmonic, Boston Symphony Orchestra, Cleveland Orchestra, Philadelphia Orchestra, Los Angeles Philharmonic, Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra, Staatskapelle Dresden, that's in Germany, Leipzig Gu und Os Orchestra. Talk about tongue twisters. San Francisco Symphony. That was easy. Uh-oh. All right. Mariinsky Theater Orchestra. St. Petersburg Philharmonic Orchestra. Czech Philharmonic in Prague. Budapest Festival Orchestra. NHK Symphony Orchestra. Monte Carlo Philharmonic. London Philharmonic Orchestra. Russian National Orchestra. Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. Gulben Lydian Orchestra in Lisbon, Portugal. Qatar Philharmonic Orchestra. And I do all this request to you, my Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Let's get the largest playhouses. I get some tongue twisters here, boy, I'll tell you. the words like I never saw. Okay, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I bind all the unclean spirits from being inside any person that owns, operates, controls, or works for any of the following playhouses, and the unclean spirits shall immediately depart from them when I read the name of the playhouse, never to return unto them again, and no unclean spirit may remain inside any person watching any play or production or rehearsal in any of these playhouses for the next 1 year continuously, beginning when I read the name of the playhouse out loud. And if they shall not want, they shall depart from the person the very minute or the very instant the play begins or the rehearsal begins. They shall not warn the people beforehand, nor ever explain it to them after the fact when they've left the people. And this is done B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with this. The first one is the National Center for the Performing Arts in Beijing, China. The next is Kennedy Center Opera House. The next is Teatro Colón in Argentina. The next is Metropolitan Opera House. Next is Sydney Opera House. Next is Royal Opera House. These are different opera houses, and the operas are kind of a play too. Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. Mariinsky Theater in Russia. Teatro alla Scala in Italy. We're getting repeats here, aren't we? Vienna State Opera, Paris Opera, Bavarian State Opera, Teatro Real, Lyric Opera of Chicago, San Francisco Opera, and I submit all this to you, my Heavenly Father Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree. Let's see what else we can hit. Let's get the ski resorts. Oh, they're not skiing this time of year yet. Waste. Airports of the 25 richest cities in the world. Let's do that. No, this didn't work. It's not good. Let's redo this. I rephrased it. Let's see if we get it. It was giving me richest cities. It wasn't giving me what I wanted. Let's see. I think we might have it. Okay. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I bind all you unclean spirits from remaining inside any person that's currently in any of these airports that I'm going to read the names off. You unclean spirits shall immediately depart from every person that owns, operates, controls, or is inside any of these airports on the runways, passenger terminals, tarmac, the roads, anything, the buildings, the offices, anything that belongs to this airport. The people are in, you shall immediately depart from them, never to return unto them again. And for a period of 1 year continuously from now, you shall depart from every person that enters these airports. You shall not warn them of this beforehand, nor shall you explain it to them after you've departed from them. And these commands are set in place now, these binding, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and shall apply to the following airports: John F. Kennedy International Airport, the San Francisco International Airport, Tokyo International Airport, Singapore Shanghai Airport, Los Angeles International Airport, Heathrow Airport in London, Paris, it would be the Charles de Gaulle Airport, Hong Kong International Airport, Sydney International Airport, Chicago O'Hare International Airport, Beijing Capital International Airport, Shanghai Pudong International Airport, Toronto Pearson International Airport, Frankfurt Airport, Zurich Airport, George Bush International Airport, Seoul, no, it's Incheon International Airport in Seoul, Melbourne, Marine Airport, Melbourne Marine Airport, Geneva Airport, Dubai International Airport, Shahrapati, I lost it. Shahrapati International Airport, depart. And then we got Fort Worth International Airport, Miami International Airport, Taiwan, Taoyuan International Airport, oh my gosh, Shera En Et Yo International Airport, abbreviated SVO, in Moscow. International Shivaji Maharaji International Airport in India. And that's it. So I submit all this binding to you, my Heavenly Father, Jehovah B'Shem, Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree to this. Let's hit the richest beach communities. Ha ha ha. Let's see what we get. Went. No, it's not working. Okay, let me redo it. I don't know why it's not producing. Oh, it's getting confused. Yeah, it's asking me for beach community. It doesn't understand what I want. It's asking me about property listings. Doesn't get it. Um, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I command you unclean spirits, I bind you unclean spirits from remaining inside any person that's a member of any of the following yacht clubs that I'm going to read out. When I read out the name, you must depart from all the people that are members of this yacht club, as well as everyone who lives in the same house as them. And none of these unclean spirits shall return unto them again ever, and no unclean spirits shall go into any of these people, or communicate with them, or guide them, lead them, direct them, help them, assist them, lie to them, deceive them, reward them, or threaten them, or help them in any matter, using any means at their disposal, the unclean spirits, for 1 year continuously, beginning now. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and this applies to New York Yacht Club, Royal Yacht Squadron, Yacht Club of Monaco, Royal Thames Yacht Club, Royal Cork, was I? Royal Cork Yacht Club in Ireland, San Francisco Yacht Club in Belvedere. That's in Marin, not San Francisco. Sarasota Yacht Club, Savannah Yacht Club in Georgia. Southern Yacht Club in New Orleans, Grosse Point Yacht Club, Royal Hong Kong Yacht Club, Royal Prince Edward Yacht Club, St. Francis Yacht Club, Eastern Yacht Club, Lauderdale Yacht Club, Annapolis Yacht Club, Royal Nova Scotia Yacht Club, Yacht Club Italiano, Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron, Royal London Yacht Club, Chicago Yacht Club, San Diego Yacht Club, Palm Beach Yacht Club, Carolina Yacht Club, and Sea View Yacht Club in the UK. I submit all this to you for binding my Heavenly Father B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree. Okay, let's do some banks. Want to know where your S spots are? Follow the money. Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach, I bind you unclean spirits from remaining inside any person that has an account or controls an account, directly or indirectly, in any of the following banks that I read the name of off. The unclean spirits shall immediately depart from all these people and every member of their household, servants and family, when I read the name off, and they shall never return unto them again. And these people shall not, the unclean spirits shall not be able to go into any of these people, nor guide them, lead them, direct them, help them, assist them, reward them, punish them, lie to them, deceive them, for a period of 1 year continuously, beginning now. And this binding pertains to the following banks: J.P. Morgan Private Bank, UBS Wealth Management, Goldman Sachs Private Wealth Management, Morgan Stanley Private Wealth Management, Bank of America Private Bank in Charlotte, in America. Citi Private Bank in New York, Credit Suisse Private Bank in Switzerland, Julius Bayer Group in Zurich, HSBC Private Banking in London, Deutsche Bank Wealth Management in Frankfurt, BNP Paribas Wealth Management in France, PNC Private Bank in Pittsburgh, Coutts, London, HOARE and Company in London, Weatherby's Private Bank, Pictet Wealth Management in Geneva, Lombard Odier in Geneva, Bank J. Safra Saracen in Basel, Switzerland, Rothschild and Company Wealth Management in London. Well, they only handle $100 billion worth of stuff, huh? Barclays Private Bank in London, EFG International in Zurich, Standard Chartered Private Bank in London, and Bank of Singapore in Singapore, DBS Private Bank in Singapore, Hana Bank Private Banking in South Korea. And I submit all this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And you can agree with that. I have another one by request. I take requests like they do at music concerts. I bind all you unclean spirits from remaining inside any person who owns, operates, or controls the Federal Reserve Bank in America or any of its compartments or divisions, as well as the Bank of England and the Bank of Israel. And you shall depart from these people, never return unto them again, and all the members of the family that live with them in their house, and also depart from all of their employees, and everyone who lives with them in their house. Never return unto them again, and this is all done b'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. Okay, we created some significant damage today. So, my Heavenly Father, I pray for me and my wife, for our peace, safety, protection, joy, and healing of our bodies and our minds. And I pray we walk in the truth of the gospel, and we know the truth of the gospel. And I pray for our finances to increase and our animals and pets to be happy, healthy, and whole, and safe and secure. And I pray for better videos, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And you can agree with all this if you like, and I would ask you to, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach. And I hope you got something out of this. And I imagine we dented Satan's kingdom pretty nice today. And I really ran overboard, 3 hours and 43 minutes. Oy vey. I'm out, guys. Sorry for so long. I'm out. Bye. Thanks.